Guys, welcome to another lecture discussion, whatever you guys are calling these, in the ones where we're trying to understand the interpretation of dreams as an apparatus. Not just to be able to write well, but also to be able to understand other pieces of work well. Um, so I'd continue by saying that Freud himself, um, in later editions of the work, said that despite all of his research, there is no solid solution to the dream problem, right? Certain people, because he went on to meet a lot of people who watch dreams, or who dreams occur to, all of that stuff. He sat down with a lot of scientists and researchers that were working on the dream problem. He went to some of the best libraries in the world that had journals about the dream problem. And so he concluded that, but there is no solution to the dream problem. Because even all the research that's being done, as per Freud himself, was hypothesis merely. It was not actually something solid, to the sense that obviously when somebody is dreaming, you can observe them probably that they're dreaming something. For example, if somebody is dreaming like they're walking through a very hot atmosphere, then they would probably be sweating, right? One of the sensations that can occur as part of the dream can be sweating. But that's just an observation on the outside POV. You don't know exactly what they're dreaming. They can probably get up later and tell you, but you don't know exactly what they're dreaming and why they're dreaming so. Why they're dreaming so is the major answer to the dream problem, right? Because sometimes some people would dream something like, for example, walking through something really hot, and some people would say that's a sign of tough times. Some people say it's imagination. They may have watched a movie, read a book. Similarly, some people would say that it's just a dream. Maybe somebody would say that you've done something wrong and God's trying to tell you that, you'd go to hell if you continue with that. I'm just saying. So there can be multiple interpretations to it, but there is no actual answer. Similarly, how, for example, when somebody sees somebody die in a dream, some people say it means that, they have a period of change coming in their life. Some people say that it signifies that that person's relationship with the person who's seen them die has changed. And some people say that no, it actually means somebody will get married. Similarly, you see somebody lost, and everybody's trying to find them, but you can't find them. Some people say that a bit of it can mean that they're in a problem. Some people say that it might indicate probably loss or death. So there's several interpretations to it, obviously. And the thing with the dream problem is that not every time will you actually have an instant answer to it, right? For example, you see somebody lost, and they're fine, they're alive. And so you don't know why did you see them lost. But something's wrong in your nervous system. Now, in the real world, if talking pragmatically, it can also constitute to a bit of paranoia, right? Because what if that person's life is apparently going all okay? But it can also mean that somebody's plotting something behind their back. It can mean a lot of things. So the dream problem remains complicated even as per Freud, despite all the arguments that he's been able to put together. He himself later concluded, not just in the editions, but basically in the preface of the editions. For example, when he wrote the first German edition, he said, I shall have to justify myself for not extending my summary of the literature of dream problems to cover the period between first appearance of this book and the publication of the second edition. The justification may not seem very satisfactory to the reader. Nonetheless, to me, it was decisive. This motivates which induced me to summarize the treatment of dreams in the literature of the subject have been exhausted by the foregoing introduction. To have continued this would have cost me a great deal of effort and would not have been particularly useful or instructive. Because by the first edition of the German piece of work, because also remember that interpretation of dreams was a kind of work that when it came into existence, people were really intrigued by it. Not initially accepted it, but they were all really intrigued by it. Everybody wanted to have access to it. So then, of course, different people from different countries, different languages wanted to have access to it because they wanted to know what is the solution to this dream problem. But when it came to him writing the first edition for Germans, or working on the first edition for Germans, he clearly said that he can't justify, but it's just been a lot of back and forth. Because by that time he had already gone through a lot of journals, met a lot of scientists, all of that had already happened. Then 9 years later, it came to the fourth edition of the German version of Interpretation of Dreams. By then, he concluded that the scientific journals have been misguiding because obviously from first edition to fourth edition, 9 years, he had gone through a lot more scientific journals to improve his piece of work. Now what he discovered was that in every scientific journal there is obviously certain techniques of inquiry that are being used for research. Now, firstly, those techniques of inquiry were all different. Secondly, as I mentioned, that when somebody is asleep, they're asleep. Yes, you can try everything, you can monitor their blood pressure, blah, 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 but you can't be that person. And neither can you really know what is going to happen in the future. And that's where the whole dream problem then continues, because you don't know actually. Despite that also, but just keep in mind that despite all of this, despite him stating this openly in the preface, that by the fourth edition, that dude, I've gone through so many journals to improve this, so many journals to find my answer, met so many people, but the thing is that it will keep getting complicated because all these scientists will keep misguiding you. Everybody has their own theory to it. He was able to create a piece of work which globally people wanted access to and still read and appreciate because of the way that he was able to create it. It's not the point that he tried to make, it's the perspective that he brought in. And then, of course, by the fourth German edition, as I mentioned, that he very clearly stated himself, and it was in his preface that he wrote that there is no solution. Everybody's giving their own 2 cents of POV, because everybody has their own 2 cents of POV to the dream problem, and that's about it. I hope that these discussions, lectures, whatever these are for interpretation of dreams, are making sense. Everybody's enjoying them, everybody's able to understand them, and you're also able to understand that I could have read Freud's interpretation of dreams word by word, the copy that I have, which is Wordsworth, but the thing is that I think it's readily available on the internet, Freud's interpretation of dreams, and also in bookstores, different versions of it. And everybody can read it on their own, because some versions of it now are also in very simple words. But the thing is, it's about being able to understand what makes it what it is. Um, when they always say what's behind the work is his perspective and his ability to write in such convincing ways that we always talk about Freud's theories, right? Most people have not read Interpretation of Dreams. So when you're talking about superego and stuff like that, people talk about it in a very convincing way with a lot of conviction that no, if a child is doing this, then this is the thing. But Freud himself, by the end of his life, said that no, I mean, with whatever research I've done to improve my own work, this is all hypothesis. I've just been able to write it in a very convincing way. And perhaps my perspective or my inquisitiveness or my inquiry brought that kind of attention. And that's what's really important to learn from this piece of work, the perspective. Because that's what makes Interpretation of Dreams. I think that's about it for this video. If you like the video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up as well as subscribe to the channel, guys, and don't forget to do the task in the description below, because that will help you open up your mind on where or which direction I'm trying to build this course to, and also give you conceptual clarity in terms of what is Interpretation of Dreams, why does it really matter so much, and what makes it the it thing. And again, I'm not demeaning his genius, obviously, but this is all stuff that he himself said, which I'm just reiterating, because when people talk about the superego theory and stuff like that, and I've often seen a lot of people talk about it, people are talking about it with a lot of conviction, without realizing or without having complete knowledge, right? That even those theories of Sigmund Freud, he himself later at the end of his life said, and in Interpretation of Dreams, because that was one of his major pieces of work, right? That's where a lot of this erupted from. He himself very clearly stated that all these theories of mine, they have no real grounding. It was just that perhaps I collected so many perspectives and put them together in a way that everybody was convinced. See you guys in another video.